Okay, this lesson is called Cut to the Bone. Please put the title at the top of your page with the date and add it to your table of contents. You can press pause if you need to. We're going to begin with a quote by the poet Robert Wallace, who says that poetry is especially an art of compression. What do you think he means by that? And where have you heard that word compression or compress before? You may have heard of compression shorts. You may have even worn them. Compression shorts are worn by athletes who need muscle support. And these shorts work by compressing or squeezing the muscle tissue enough so that less damage occurs while the athletes are working. So the verb compress then means to force something or squeeze something into less space. And some of the power of a good poem comes from the poet's ability to say a lot in a short space, to make sure that every word is loaded with meaning and necessary to the poem. So when I'm working, the first and last things I do when I revise a poem are cut. When I write the first draft, I know I'm going to say more than I need to because I'm so focused on getting my feelings and the sensory details of the experience down on the page. I try to include anything that might be essential. Then I let the poem sit for at least a day. I come back to it and start to tighten, get rid of obvious fluff and redundancies. And then as I work through subsequent revisions and drafts, I make additions, I make substitutions, and I continue to delete. And finally, when I think I'm done with a poem, I cut it to the bone. I look for clutter, unnecessary words, vagueness, redundancies, distractions, and I cut. I weigh every line and word. Does it deserve the space it's taking up in my poem? Does a smart reader need it? Does it do anything? And I cut some more. And in the process of doing this, I've sometimes cut my poems by a third or more. I really live by a quote from the poet Bobby Katz, who says, "I know a poem is finished when I can't find another word to cut." Look with me at the first draft of Car Accident, a poem by my former student, David McMurtry. Car accident. I have a hard time flashing back to that unforgettable night when the silence in our car was broken with deafening screams. Our car's tire got caught in a ditch. In a few moments of screams and screeches, the car was already flipping. It rolled 4 times before it came to a halt, upside down with adrenaline shooting through my veins. I unbuckled and crawled out a broken window. With no shoes on my feet and only a fraction of my family out of the car, I was bawling. The car was smoking, firemen were saving my family, and ambulances were taking them away. I was only 5 at the time, scared for my siblings, and especially my mother, for she was unrecognizable with blood all over her face. That image still sits in the back of my mind to this day. So there is much here that can go. Bad words like got, unnecessary information like that image still sits in the back of my mind to this day. Ideas that can be compressed, redundancies like in a few moments of screams and screeches after he's already told us in the second line there were deafening screams. Words like unforgettable night, sort of dead words. He's showing us that. He doesn't need to tell us it was unforgettable. Okay? So I showed David how I might trim some of the first few lines, and I told him to have a go at the rest of the poem. And this was the result over here. Accident. Let's read the second draft together. Accident. I have a hard time flashing back to that night. Our car's tire caught in a ditch, engine screaming, and then the car was flipping over. It rolled 4 times before it came to a halt, upside down. I unbuckled and crawled out a broken window, adrenaline shooting through my veins. With no shoes on my feet and only a fraction of my family out of the car, I fearfully watched. The car was smoking and my siblings were trapped, choking in the car, dangling from their seats. Firemen were saving my family and ambulances were taking them away. Scared for my siblings and especially my mother, for she was unrecognizable with blood masking her face. I was only 5 at the time when the silence in our car was broken with deafening screams. What other changes do you see here besides the ones I already mentioned? And can't you hear and see the difference? His poem is a lot thinner, shorter, more compressed lines, right? He really learned the difference between prose and the more concise language of poetry. I think he really did it. He cut to the bone, and his revision reminds me of a remark by the poet William Coles, who says that poetry is elegant shorthand. So let's put some words to the gist of this lesson. Please copy these notes into your reader-writer notebooks. You can pause on this slide if you need to. When you're done, you can move into your own work. Make sure to jot down any questions you have about cutting to the bone or comments so we can look at them together tomorrow.